This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi Sai. Again, Erev Yom Tov. So I want to share with you a very important sugya, Masechta Sukkah. We're just going to read a few lines in the Gemara, and then we're going to go off on the importance of these few lines. The Gemara quotes a line from the Mishnah, Zeh HaKlal, anything which is Mekabel Tuma, or it doesn't grow from the ground, is pasul for schach. Okay? Kol Davar, we're on Daf Yud Aleph Amud Beis, and we're about 8 lines from the bottom. Zeh HaKlal, Kol Davar Shemekabel Tuma, anything that is susceptible to becoming tamei and does not grow from the ground is pasul from schach. Minani Mili. How do we know such a thing? How do we know that if something is mekabel tuma or does not grow from the ground, it's pasul for schach? Amar Reish Lakish said, Amar Kra, it says in Bereshis, Ve'ed ya'ala min haaretz, and a cloud came up from the earth. So now we know that the mitzvah of Sukkos is commemorating Annanei Hakavod. And now from this pasuk of Ve'ed ya'ala min haaretz, you know what you learn? You learn that clouds grow out of the earth. It says Ve'ed ya'ala min haaretz.
What's the context of that pasuk?
That's talking about when Hashem created the earth, and
from the earth or from the what? From the sea?
No, from the earth.
The third shita that we have.
No, it's a one shita. Clouds come from the earth. In other words, water either comes from the ocean or comes from the heavens. But where do clouds come from? Clouds come from the earth. That's what the Gemara Reish Lakish is teaching. Ve'ed ya'ala min haaretz. Clouds come from the earth. The cloud ascended from the earth. This is in the context of the state of Gan Eden before the creation, before things started to grow, before Adam HaRishon was around. It says Ve'ed ya'ala min haaretz, and things weren't growing because Adam HaRishon didn't daven yet. There was no person to daven. So Rashi says Shema Mina, Anonim gidulei karkaninu. From this pasuk we learn a chidush nifla that clouds are considered something that grows out of the earth. The sukkah may anonim yafinim. Sukkah is learned out from clouds. Shaharei zechel Annanei Hakavod, because it's in commemoration of the Annanei Hakavod. How do I know that sukkah is in commemoration of the Annanei Hakavod? Kedechsev ki basukkos hashavti. It says in the pasuk in Emar ki basukkos hashavti umetargamina. And what's the targum on that pasuk? Arei b'matlos ananoni. Because in the covering of a cloud. So Targum says the pshat in the words ki basukkos hashavti is Annanei Hakavod. So if Sukkos are sat in to commemorate Annanei Hakavod, and clouds grow from the ground and are not mekabel tuma, ma'ed, just like a cloud, just like mist, davar she'eino mekabel tuma, v'gidulei min haaretz, just like clouds are not mekabel tuma and grow from the ground. Af sukkah davar she'eino mekabel tuma, so to a sukkah is something that is not mekabel tuma, v'gidulei min haaretz. So the Gemara asks the obvious question. This makar only works out according to the opinion that the sukkos that Hashem put us in the midbar were Annanei Hakavod. But what about according to the opinion that the sukkos were sukkos mamish? Ma hanichal manda amar Annanei Hakavod. This is all good according to manda amar that they were clouds of glory. Ela manda amar sukkos mamish. But according to the opinion that it was actually sukkos Asulahem, they made for themselves ma'ikol meimar. The Tanya we learned in a brayso, ki basukos hoishavti es bnei Yisrael, because in Sukkos I situated the bnei Yisrael. Annanei Hakavod, clouds of glory hayu. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Akiva oimer Sukkos mamish. Rabbi Eliezer says Annanei Hakavod. Rabbi Akiva says Sukkos mamish. Asulahem. Hanichal Rabbi Eliezer. This is good according to Rabbi Eliezer. According to Rabbi Eliezer, Ela Rabbi Akiva ma'ikol meimar, but according to Rabbi Akiva that learns that the sukkahs Hashem situated us in were actually actual sukkahs that we made for ourselves, then you have no makar that a sukkah has to be davar she'eino mekabel tuma v'gidulei min haaretz, because maybe in the midbar the sukkahs they made were mekabel tuma and did not grow from the ground. Okay. So the Gemara says, I'll tell you the first pshat of the Gemara, and then we'll explain this machlekes. Kias Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi came. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Kra. It says, Chag HaSukkos Ta'aseh. The festival of Sukkos you should make for yourself. It says Chag, and it says Sukkos. Makish Sukkah l'Chagiga. We compare the Sukkah to the carbon Chagiga. Ma Chagiga davar she'enoi mekabel tuma. Just like the carbon Chagiga is an animal, which is not mekabel tuma. V'gidulei min haaretz, and grows from the earth. Yehuda, how does the carbon chagiga grow from the earth? It's a cow. Cows don't grow from the earth. Why would the Gemara say that the carbon chagiga grows from the earth?
They live on the earth.
Excellent. No, they live. What do you mean they live on the earth, as opposed to outer space? What do you mean the cow lives on the earth?
On the ground.
They live on the ground, as opposed to what?
In the heavens.
In the heavens? Who lives in the heavens? What would you say? What is their connection with the earth? Are they plants? Only plants grow from the earth. Do cows grow from the earth? What do cows eat?
Plants.
Cows eat plants. Cows are herbivores. So cows in halacha have a status of something that grows from the earth. You know why? Because they're dependent on that which grows from the earth. So in halacha they're considered gedulei karka.
Humans too?
No, because humans, real humans eat meat.
Which are dependent on.
But that's already a second step. Okay? Well, that's true. As opposed to now, what doesn't grow from the earth? Fish, salt, and mushrooms, Rashi says. Now, we're going to, ultimately Rashi says that we're going to fall off of this because they could be called, at the end of the day, we're not going to call them Gidula min ha'aretz. We'll call them Gidulei karka. In halacha, animals are called Gidulei karka, but they're not called Gidula min ha'aretz.
So like animal hide is...
So according to this answer of the Gemara, then animal hide would be good for schach, but lahalacha it's not good for schach. We're going to ultimately fall off of it. Now this is not really what I wanted to get to today. I wanted to discuss the machlokes in general, Sukkos Mamash or Annanei Hakavod. First I want to discuss the girsa. Our girsa is, Rabbi Eliezer says they were Annanei Hakavod, and Rabbi Akiva says that it's Sukkos Mamash. The thing is that normally we would paskin like Rabbi Akiva, and in halacha we paskin that the Sukkos, we paskin la halacha Annanei Hakavod and not Sukkos Mamash, which is like Rabbi Eliezer, not like Rabbi Akiva. What you need to know is that if you look...
What's the difference in halacha and...
I didn't get into the nafkaminos yet, but we're going to see the halacha paskins Annanei Hakavod. We'll see what that means. What does that mean, the halacha paskins Annanei Hakavod? But if you look in the Torah's Koyanim, the girsa is the opposite. The girsa is Rabbi Akiva says Annanei Hakavod, and Rabbi Eliezer says Sukkos Mamash. So this girsa of the Gemara is not for sure. Yehuda, get me a Mishnah Berurah Chelek Vav. Quick. Mishnah Berurah Chelek Vav. So what's the nafkamin? What kind of machlokes is this? What are we commemorating? Right over there. Look. Right where your left hand is. What's the nafkamina in halacha between whether the sukkos that we're commemorating are Annanei Hakavod or the sukkos we're commemorating were the actual sukkos that we sat in the midbar? First of all, it's rather odd that it's the only mitzvah, it's the only Yom Tif that what are we celebrating? It's machlokes. It's machlokes. You know, matzah. What are you doing? Oh, according to Rabbi Akiva, I'm remembering this. No, we know what we're doing. We're remembering one particular incident.
It's a mitzvah, the fact that they sat in sukkahs, there was on the way out of Mitzrayim, they had a place.
So we're going to see that it actually makes a very big difference in halacha. Because if you look in Hilchos Sukkah, the Shulchan Aruch uncharacteristically seems to get involved in this machlokes. Shulchan Aruch says, Ayay, in Siman, Tafreish Chafei, Bak Sukkos Teshu Shivas Yamim, Ki Bas Sukkos Hoshafti Esminei Yisrael, Heim Annanei Hakavod Shehikifam Bahem Leval Yakim Shara Vashemesh. These are the clouds of glory that Hashem surrounded them in, so they should not be hurt by the heat and by the sun. Why is the Shulchan Aruch getting involved in a machlokes that has no bearing on halacha? The Shulchan Aruch is not a Divrei Agadata. It's not a sefer about the Agadic portions of Shas. The Shulchan Aruch is a sefer of Piskei Halacha. So you should tell me this whole siman is unneeded. Basukash Teishu Tivas Yamim. He's quoting a pasuk. Heim Annanei Hakavod. That's the whole siman in Halacha. Why does the Shulchan Aruch get involved in this machlokes at all? The Bach says as follows. The Bach says there are three mitzvahs in the Torah where the Torah doesn't only tell you what to do, but the Torah tells you the reason to do it. Where the Torah uses the word laman. it says Laman by tzitzis, Laman tizkaru v'asisam es kol mitzvosai v'yisam kedoshim le'elokechem, that you put on tzitzis in order to remember all the mitzvahs in the Torah. It says Laman by tefillin. It says by tefillin Laman tiyeh Torah Hashem beficha k'viyat chazaka hitziach Hashem es b'nei somei eretz Mitzrayim. And it says Laman by sukkah, Laman yedu doresechem. To teach, says the Bach, that if you want to fulfill the mitzvah properly, it's not enough to do it. Every other mitzvah we paskin mitzvah is maybe ain't tzrichas kavana. But these mitzvahs, that means when you do a mitzvah, there's a machlokes in halacha. Can you bring me chelek aleph, Mishnah Berurah?
I hope so.
No, I don't hope so. When it comes to other mitzvahs, there's a machlokes. Do I need to be mechavein that I'm doing a mitzvah of Hashem, or do I not? Mishnah Berurah, do I not need to have that kavanah in mind? But this is a different thing. Here the Torah says, what's the reason for the mitzvah? Says the Bach, if someone, thank you very much, says the Bach, if somebody sits in a sukkah and does not think that they're sitting in the sukkah to remember that Hashem put us in sukkahs on the way out of Mitzrayim, they have not fulfilled the mitzvah properly. Now the Mishnah Berurah says that means, that l'chatchila you're not yotzei, b'diavad you're yotzei. So the Mishnah Berurah has a lenient understanding of this, and that is, this is only mitzvah min ha'muvchar, only l'chatchila, one should have this in mind. Comes the Aruch LaNer on the Bikurei Yaakov, the Aruch LaNer paskins, that if when you sit in the sukkah, you did not think, tonight, when you eat your kazayas, if you do not think you're sitting in the sukkah, laman yedu doresechem, lo yatsa, and if you remember in the middle of the night, you have to wake up and do it again. That's the psak of the Bikurei Yaakov. With a bracha, yeah. We pass like the Mishnah Berurah that it's only chadchila.
Sukkah is not the actual ikr. Like when you make the bracha.
The bracha is nothing. The bracha is not part of the mitzvah at all. The mitzvah is sitting. The bracha is like a bracha. It's not part of the mitzvah. The mitzvah is the sitting, which according to the Bikurei Yaakov, you're not yotzei if you don't have the kavanah laman yedu. Oh! If you're not yotzei, if you don't have the kavanah laman yedu, then you need to know what the laman yedu is. Is it laman yedu doresechem kibas sukkos Annanei Hakavod, or is it Sukkos Mamash? Therefore, the Shulchan Aruch has to paskin Annanei Hakavod, because if the Shulchan Aruch wouldn't tell us what to do, and somebody would mistakenly think I'm remembering the Sukkos Mamash, they would not be yotzei the mitzvah.
If someone, when he comes out into the sukkah, has kavana, but then he sits and doesn't have kavana.
What do you mean has kavanah and then doesn't have
Yes,
kavanah?
kavanah for Sukkos Mamash.
Then lo yatsa.
No.
You're not yotzei. You didn't get the mitzvah. You would have to wake up again and eat another kazayas with a bracha.
Even though you ate in the sukkah.
Correct. You didn't eat in the sukkah because you didn't do the mitzvah.
But you actually did.
But I have a question. But what if your sukkah was pasul? So you need in a sukkah.
Okay,
but if my kavanah was pasul, then I didn't do an essential ingredient in sitting in the sukkah. Yes, according to the Bikurei Yaakov, you would have to have kavanah.
No, my question is...
The Mishnah Berurah says b'diavad you're yotzei. That's what I pointed out. The Mishnah Berurah says b'diavad you're yotzei. The Bikurei Yaakov says b'diavad you're not yotzei. The same thing by tefillin. The same thing by tzitzis. So this is very important. L'chatchila, if you want to put on tefillin in your life, for one time in your life properly, you need to think, Laman tiyeh Torah Hashem beficha. I'm putting on tefillin to remember Hashem took me out of Mitzrayim. Let's say I never had that in mind. According to the Mishnah Berurah, you're yotzei b'diavad, and according to the Bikurei Yaakov, you never put on tefillin in your life. So it's a very important yidiyah. There are three lamans: tzitzis, tefillin, sukkah. Say, who does that? I try to do that. Laman tiyeh, what?
That's where we read the part.
Doesn't, you don't have to read the parashiyos. All you could do is
that what they do? No.
Yeah.
That's why they have the...
But you could also read the parashas and completely be masasik and have no awareness that it's in order to remember Hashem to Mitzrayim. So the ikar is not saying the parashas.
Like if I'm taking the time to read the parashas, I could just nobody would judge.
Yeah. No, the parashas take time. All you have to do is have a split-second kavanah. I'm putting on tefillin to remember tzitzis time. I'm putting on tzitzis in order to remember the mitzvahs. Okay?
You have to make it that according to the Mishnah Berurah.
According to Mishnah Berurah, you're yotzei.
I don't have to be mechavan during the bracha. If I'm mechavan at some point while I'm wearing my...
Correct. According to anybody. According to anybody.
I'm saying I wouldn't...
Before you put on
pass on
tzitzis,
the
before you
bracha.
put on tefillin, they have the ratzon that you're doing the mitzvahs aseh,
Okay, but it doesn't have the reason for the mitzvah.
No, it doesn't, but is that the backing for the explanation why?
That would explain. Here there are two things. I want to tell you there is.
There is.
But according to many, you don't say it. I don't.
Still is.
There is. Right. Now, I want to share with you I want to just clarify. There's a difference between mitzvahs tzrichos or ein tzrichos kavana and the kavana laman. Where is it? I think it's in Siman Samach, right? There's a machlokes in halacha. Do mitzvahs need kavana or do mitzvahs not need kavana? Laman yedu daraisechem ki basukos hoshafti esvanei Yisrael v'hoitzi oisam me'aretz Mitzrayim. In order that you should know that when Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, He put us in Sukkos. So we ask, why does Shulchan Aruch have to paskin Annanei Hakavod? Because it makes a difference in halacha, what you should think when you sit in the sukkah. What you should think is, I'm remembering Annanei Hakavod. Don't think I'm remembering Sukkos Mamash. You could have in mind both, but you should, be'ikar, realize, what? There is a concept, elo ve'elo, but la halacha, we paskin, you're right, according to the Shulchan Aruch. Now, the truth is, not everyone agrees to the Shulchan Aruch's psak. Okay, but this is how the Shulchan Aruch. Now, in Shulchan Aruch and Siman Samach, the Shulchan Aruch says, Yesh oimrim she'ein mitzvah tzrichas kavana, v'yesh oimrim she'tzrichas kavana, v'chein halacha. The Shulchan Aruch paskins mitzvah tzrichas kavana, which means more. That if you sat in the sukkah and you didn't think I'm doing Hashem's mitzvah, you just, I'm whatever. You just thought nothing, whatever. La yatsa, any mitzvah. If let's say you put on tefillin and you don't think I'm doing the mitzvah of Hashem. Yeah, but I know I'm doing the mitzvah of Hashem. No. If you didn't think I'm doing the mitzvah of Hashem, we paskin la yatsa.
So you mean went through all the action?
That means it could be a person could do mitzvahs their whole life, and they go up to Shema and Hashem says, I sent you down here for 70 years, what do you do? I did all the mitzvahs. Yeah, no, you didn't do one mitzvah your whole life. Now the Mishnah Berurah has a big kula, the kula Chai Adam. Kula Chai Adam is staman lishma. Staman lishma means that since what? Why else am I putting on Torah? What do you think I was doing? Yeah, but you didn't have that in mind. So Chai Adam says staman lishman. B'di'eved, it works. That means you come to Shemayim, Hashem will say, you do any mitzvahs? We pass in mitzvahs kavana. You say, yeah, I did all the mitzvahs, but you didn't have it in mind. I found the Chai Adam, staman lishman. So Hashem said, very nice. So you only did all your mitzvahs b'di'eved. So lechatchila, by the way, no. So, by the way, if you came to this year just to hear the following thing, that when you put on tefillin, lechatchila, you should think, I'm doing the mitzvah of Hashem. Now all your mitzvahs are lechatchila. Whenever you do a mitzvah, you should think, I'm doing this to do a mitzvah. That's how we paskin lechatchila. But you could be samech on the Chai Adam. But when it comes to sukkah, there's another inyan, and that is laman, which according to Mishnah Berurah is lechatchila, according to B'kor Yaakov is b'di'eved. That's the first nafkamina between Sukkos Mamash and Annanei Hakavod. What should your kavanah be? Nafkamina number 2, the malbim. Okay, if you remember on Daf Beis Amud Aleph, the Gemara asks, why is a sukkah above 20 amos psula? Remember? So the Gemara brought 3 reasons. The Gemara brought Rabbi. Rabbi says, L'man yedu daraisechem, in order that you should know that you're sitting in a sukkah. Above 20 amos, a person doesn't know they're in a sukkah. Below, because ein einav shalta, mishum delay shalta ba'ina, right? So that's the pshat of Rabbi. Then Reb Zera said that if it's above 20 amos, the shade is from the walls and not from the schach. Rava says a different pshat. Amra Torah kol shivas yamim semi diras keva v'shav b'diras arai. That for 7 days you have to leave your permanent abode and go to a temporary abode. Says the Malbim, the machlokes Rabba and Rava is dependent on Annanei Hakavod or Sukkos Mamash. That if the reason we sit in sukkah is to commemorate Annanei Hakavod that hovered over our heads, you need to be able to look up at the schach and recall the Annanei Hakavod. But if it's Sukkos Mamish, then you don't have to look at the schach and remember anything. But the Manda Amar that says you have to sit in a temporary abode, why do you have to sit in a temporary abode? To commemorate the Sukkos Mamish, the temporary abodes. They sat in the midbar. Taka says the Malbim. The Gemara said on Daf Zayin Amud Beis, Abaye Amar Abaye, Rabbi Yoshia, Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Shimon, Ram Gamliel, Beis Shammai, Rabbi Eliezer, they all hold sukkah has to be diras keva. That all goes according to Manda Amar Annanei Hakavod. Sukkah diras arai is only the Manda Amar Sukkos Mamash. The problem is, then it comes out shaloi halacha, because we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer. What?
Paskin has to be a diras arai. Paskin has to be.
We paskin it has to be a diras arai.
Right.
And we paskin Annanei Hakavod. So Stamazoi, there's a question because Rabbi Lezer is one of the Amanda Amrim who say that Diras Keva, right, which fits in according to our Girsa. By the way, that fits into our Girsa in the Gemara in Yud Aleph Amud Beis that says Rabbi Lezer holds Annanei Hakavod. According to the Taras Koyanim, that Rabbi Lezer holds Sukkos Mamash, so that doesn't fit into Rabbi Lezer who holds that it could be Sukkos Keva.
Two separate.
Rabbi Lezer, right?
Two separate Rabbi Lezers?
No, not two separate Rabbi Lezers, but two separate. One is sitting in it, what you have in mind, versus the actual construction of it could be.
I mean, you need to have in mind Annanei Hakavod, but in terms of how it's made, it's to commemorate Sukkos Mamash.
Yeah.
Wow.
That would be difficult to say that you think one thing, but in terms of how to build it, it's governed by the Sukkos Mamash. Okay.
Because the Annanei Hakavod didn't have a physical composition to them, really. So you
There's
might
no
look.
wall.
Okay.
So you might look to a real sukkah.
It's an interesting.
'Cause they did sit in huts.
They did.
Everybody agrees that they were both. The only question is what
What are we
what's the bus
commemorating?
referring to?
Right.
What are we commemorating?
Okay.
I'm saying it's silly.
Third nafkamina. Ready? Third nafkamina is Gemara Daf Chav Zayin. The Gemara Daf Chav Zayin says, "Are you allowed? Do you have to stay in one sukkah the whole sukkahs, or could you eat here? You'll eat here tonight. I'll go sleep there. Tomorrow morning I'll eat in another sukkah, or do you need to stay in one sukkah the whole Yom Tov?" So the Gemara says like this. The Gemara says, Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Ein yotzim misukkah l'sukkah. You can't leave one sukkah to another. The Chachamim Omerim, yotzim misukkah l'sukkah. You could.
Again, what do you mean you cannot leave?
Do you need to stay in one sukkah the whole Yom Tov? That this is my sukkah, like we said yesterday, that maybe there's halacha, I need to make my sukkah diras keva. If I'm eating here tonight and sleeping there tomorrow and eating somewhere else the next day, I'm not making any sukkah keva.
Yeah, but I have a house in the Hamptons, got one upstate, one
Really?
in Israel, two in
Can I borrow
Greece.
it in the summer?
Oh, I'm just saying, but like
Today, in the modern world,
you
there's a
can
lot
have
more,
multiple
Okay.
abodes. That's not so.
So, okay, it's a machlekes tanoim.
silly, there's an empty slot. Where? Just sell the house in the Hamptons.
Sell one if you could have.
And there's a machlekes tanoim, friends, there's a machlekes tanoim, whether, Rabbi Lezer says you must stay in the same sukkah the whole Yom Tov, and the Chacham Paskin not like that. So the Panim Yafais, you know what the Panim Yafais is? The Rebbe, the Chsam Sofer, the Hafla, says, Rabbi Lezer on Daf Chav Zayin, who says, Ein yotzin misukkah l'sukkah, is l'shitase, who holds that sukkahs are Annanei Hakavod. Because if the sukkahs are Annanei Hakavod, Hashem protected us in the Midbar, we were in the same Annanei Hakavod for 40 years, we never moved, we never went anywhere else. But Rabbi Akiva, who holds sukkahs mamish asulahem, that means they kept on putting up and taking down and putting up a new one. So that means they moved from sukkah to sukkah.
That doesn't fit with the Aroi and Kevin side of it.
That means they went from sukkah to sukkah. So Rabbi Lezer's L'shita say he holds their Annanei Hakavod. So it was one situation the whole 40 years. So therefore we need to stay in one sukkah. According to Rabbi Lezer, they actually moved from sukkah to sukkah. Then the Hafla asked, but the truth is that the Gemara says in Tainus on the Haftas that the sukkahs were b'schus who? Aaron. And when Aaron passed away, they left. And they came back in the schus of Moshe. So that means that even the Annanei Hakavod were different ones. But he says it could be the same ones came back. Obviously this is somewhat al pi drush, okay? But
I mean, they could have taken the same literal sukkah mamish and moved it with them on the other end.
Same poles, same everything. Like
Yeah, but it's probably spiritually different entities.
But look, if the pshat is they used the bamboo, if they used leaves to cover themselves.
Obviously, they moved over 40 years.
So yeah, but did they carry their leaves with them wherever they went, or they found a new place, a new oasis, and they made new ones? Okay, look, I think this is somewhat al pi drush. The thing is that in the Shas Shus Chelkos Yoyev, it comes out that who's he paskening like? Sukkos Mamish or Annanei Hakavod? Because who do we paskin like? Do you need to be in the same sukkah the whole sukkahs? No, there's no such halacha. That means we paskin like the Chachamim. That means we're paskining sukkahs mamish. But that's not like the Shulchan Aruch. Right? But the Chelkos Yoyev says that apparently the Panim Yafais paskins sukkahs mamish. If you look in...
with what I was saying, they're two separate...
Okay, you're trying to reconcile both, right? You're trying to say that we're remembering Annanei Hakavod and we're constructing it based on Sukkos Mamish. In a more simple world, it's where it's either or. and you can't reconcile the two, then it would come out the Panim Yafos is paskening Sukkos Mamash, which is Keneged the Shulchan
I
Aruch.
think anything that's Annanei Hakavod is more Sukkos Haroi. And Sukkos Mamash is more Sukkos Keva. But here...
Maybe,
with
but the
this-
Malbim
with this
said not like
Haftamina-
that.
This Haftamina,
But the Malbim
it
said not like
switches,
that.
and Haftamina switches also.
The Malbim said Sukkos Mamish was the reason why it can't be higher than 20, and Diras Arai was Sukkos Mamish. You saying you could play right? In other words, the Malbim is not mukhrach. You could say that even Annanei Hakavod it's Diras Arai, right? Fine. One more nafkamina, then we'll hold it. There's a Mordechai on Daf Zayin Amud Beis. Ready for this? The Gemara says like this. We know that a sukkah cannot have more sun than shade. So that means that means it has to be more shade than sun, right? What if it's more shade than sun, not because of the schach, but because of the walls?
The Gemara will sugi on that.
Meaning like this, excuse me. What if the schach is causing shade, but the walls are translucent, and the walls let in more sun than shade? So now, the schach is capable of creating more shade than sun, but the walls are not. Do the walls also have to create more shade than sun?
Wouldn't that make a difference?
L'chaira. So Rabbi Yoshia says the walls also. Rabbi Yemar Bar Shalama said, what's the reason of Rabbi Yoshia? It says v'sakoisa al ha'arayin es ha'paroiches. The paroiches is a mechitza, and it's called schach. Alma mechitza keschach ba'inan. So from here we see that the walls have to have the same status of the schach. Says the Mordechai, according to Rabbi Yoshia, who we don't paskin like, it would come out that the walls cannot be mekabel tumah and the walls cannot be gedula karka.
Hold on 1 second, but we also learned in the beginning that wall have to be only 3 amas. After that it can be air, space, and then we can put schach. Right? We had.
That's how we paskin, but that Rabbi Yoshia disagrees with that.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Correct. We don't paskin like Rabbi Yoshia.
I could be mistaken.
You could
but
also
I
have
think
the-
that L'chatchila was supposed to use things with the same material, stock. It's not going to look It's not so it's
For the walls?
metal,
No, we
it's a sheet. I'm not saying we paskin that way, but it's a sheet.
right. Okay, you don't put the schach on. You don't. Not only is
Why
the
can't
schach.
you put the schach on something that's
No, because it's a
workable?
mamid. It's a
a ma-
mamid. Doesn't have the funness could be, but it can be.
But don't we talk about also? There's lots of cases in Sukkah where they're
You're right. But we don't paskin right because we don't paskin like Rabbi Yoshia. We don't paskin. Rabbi Yoshia holds that now again. All Rabbi Yoshia says is the walls cannot allow in more sun than shade. The Mordechai, who by the way the Marsha and the Marshal argue on, says I'm not done. What's going on?
Just getting ready.
What? Don't get ready. The Marsha argues, the Marsha says that even according to Rabbi Yoshia, that the walls cannot let in more sun than shade, but the walls could be Eino Gedulei Karka and could be Mekabel Tumah. This is the Chiddush of the Mordechai in the Shita Rabbi Yoshia. So there's a tshuva in the Chelkas Yoav. He says like this. He says, the Kinsker Rav, who's a Talmud of Abnei Nezer. He says,
That's what it is.
what's pshat in Rabbi Elazar? What's pshat in this shita of Rabbi Yoshia? That the whole sukkah has to be kosher schach? Annanei Hakavod. Why? Because if it's Annanei Hakavod, we have to remember Annanei Hakavod. Annanei Hakavod completely encircled us.
And what does sukkah do?
As opposed to a sukkah of Sukkos Mamash is only referring to the schach.
Alright, first Russian this way.
Yeah? So says the Kinskarav, listen carefully, that Rabbi Yoshia's shita is going like Rabbi Elazar, that it's Annanei Hakavod. So he says that what Shver is, that the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch paskin Annanei Hakavod, but we don't paskin like Rabbi Yoshia. Okay, anyway, this might be another nafkamina, meaning Annanei Hakavod Sukkos Mamash may play a role in the status of what is required for a wall of a sukkah. So bottom line is there are 4 nafkaminas. One of them is Nagea Mamash Halacha. That is, what difference does it make Annanei Hakavod Sukkos Mamash? Number 1, what you need to think when you sit in the sukkah. Okay, and we pass, you need to think Annanei Hakavod. Number 2, Annanei Hakavod Sukkos Mamash, that may make a difference why above 20 amos is pasul. Is it Doi Sholta Ba'ina? The Malbim says that's connected to Annanei Hakavod. Is it Diras Arai? The Malbim says that's connected to Sukkos Mamash. Third nafkamina is whether you need to stay in one sukkah the whole Sukkos. Fourth nafkamina, whether the walls of a sukkah need to be the same kosher material as chach. Again, obviously some of these nafkaminas you could play around with because they're not mukhrach. The only thing that is definite and absolute is what lahalacha one should think when they sit in the sukkah. L'man yedu d'oreisechem. Okay, shkoyach everyone. Good Yom Tov.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.